The motion presented to conference by NHC Cymru was around funding in Wales. The head teachers are given the money they need to run their schools so that children have the best life chances and that their well-being, their achievement and attainment are maximised. So it's about getting the right money to the right places in school and all the services that support schools.
Yeah, I proposed a motion this afternoon on funding for additional learning needs in Wales. There's a massive reform that's gone through, became law in September last year, and the Minister has been convinced that this is cost neutral. Well, the extra work involved can't be cost neutral, and it means that additional learning needs coordinators are actually crippled by the workload. They're working flat out in school time, in evenings, weekends and during the holidays to get all the paperwork done. So what we've been asking for in our motion is two things. One, that the union campaigns for adequate funding for the additional learning needs reform, so that we've actually got the money to release additional learning needs coordinators to actually do their job. And also we actually want to have a proper workload impact assessment for Elencos to see how much of their work is actually doable in the time that they have, because it is a massive reform and a massive responsibility that Elencos have had to take on.
I presented the motion on a fully funded uplift for pay rises in Wales. We have an issue at the moment where the Welsh Government has announced a 1.75% increase in pay, but that has to be fully funded for the future. Now what's happened at the moment is that part of that has been funded by Welsh Government and the balance was supposed to be funded by each of the 22 local authorities, some of whom have fully funded their part, some of whom have part funded it, and others didn't fund their part at all. So of course for those who didn't fully fund or didn't fund at all, that's impacted the school's own budget. So as a consequence of that pay rise not being fully funded, schools have had to use money which, strictly speaking, should be there for the purposes of the children's education, but it had to be used to balance the agreed 1.75% uplift. So the motion we put forward was that National Executive would support us in a fully funded request that will go to the Welsh Government and the Welsh Local Government Association. That was agreed unanimously in the conference this afternoon, which was obviously what we hoped and what we were pleased to decide upon. But I think the whole notion of fully funded is the issue here. It can't possibly come from the school's balances. Many schools are operating in the red already, so by definition, any further pressures on schools' budgets simply to pay a pay rise seems completely inequitable to us, and I think that's why that was reflected in a unanimous vote in the motion.
So we presented a motion on curriculum reform. Wales is going through a radical period of curriculum reform at the moment. We talked about the pressures that we're under in schools, so we're thinking about the pandemic and we're already on that road to recovery, but while we've been doing that, we've also been going through this introduction of a new curriculum. So we were asking for just a bit more time for us to put that into place from Welsh Government, because we're on quite a steady journey within that curriculum reform. Then the second part of that, we were talking about bringing secondary schools into the reform and aligning the qualifications so they've got an understanding of how they can change their curriculum in line with new qualifications as they come through, because nothing has yet been done about that.
So we are presenting an emergency motion to conference. What we are wanting is an answer to why we have no DFE representation here at conference, given that we've just had a white paper which sets out a strategic direction for the government, which seems at odds with some of the things that we've talked about previously with the DFE.
I think one of the things coming to conference is the opportunity to engage in dialogue and to listen to the Secretary of State and to have an opportunity for them to clarify some of the things that they've written in their papers, and a real opportunity to engage with us at that level. It is practice that we do have a representative from the DFE, and we are enormously disappointed that not only could the Secretary of State not attend, but there was no minister available from the DFE to come to our conference to engage with us in this dialogue.
Yeah, and it's a two-way dialogue that we really need to happen. We have just been through a pandemic. We have been at the front line, open, doing our job in public with the children, with our staff, and the value of the DFE talking to school leaders about what's going on in schools can only improve the kinds of decisions that they're making for the system and for education. And it's really disappointing not to be able to have our voices heard informing what's going forward.
And we need to make that voice heard. And so we put together an emergency motion so that we can actually record that formally at this conference.